Drivers of just married couples. What do newlyweds usually talk about and what was your most unforgettable ride? Bike taxi driver here. I have done a lot of these. Most of the time, they recap the night to one another. Maybe they'll go over some drama that happened between the families. Usually they are just exhausted after a long day and looking forward to enjoying their hotel room. Once I had a couple that had a total meltdown of an argument. It was both hilarious and terribly sad. The groom was blacked out drunk and the bride was fed up. She yelled at him the whole way to the hotel and he was a total drunk butthole in return. All while people on the street are congratulating them and me just listening. We arrived at the hotel and she stormed off. The groom asked me to take him to the bar around the corner to meet with his buddies. I obliged and he gave me a nice tip. I hope they're doing okay. I hope they're doing okay. Narrator, they aren't. Can you believe the dresses I got them to wear? I can't believe I managed to follow them all down the aisle without breaking up. Considering the bender we all went on last night, I can't believe one of my best men didn't throw up during the vows. I absolutely don't understand making your wedding party wear ugly dresses. Sure, they look worse than you for a day, but all the other guests probably think you just have awful taste and you're the one that has to look at a bunch of stupid ugly dresses in your wedding photos for the rest of your life. Limo driver here. I've picked up quite a few just married couples after weddings. There isn't really one story that stands out, just mostly the couple recapping the evening. I've had a few where one partner is clearly more intoxicated than the other, so there's usually some embarrassments from the more sober partner. There was one time I picked up a couple the day after their wedding to take them to a major airport 3+ hours away and they realized about halfway the guy didn't have his ID. New wife is freaking out in a panic while the husband is trying to stay calm. Luckily they were able to challenge the details on his ID to verify it was really him and they got on the plane. Not a taxi driver, got married in January. Her younger brother gave us a ride home and he is a super innocent guy. Drunkenly said as he dropped us off at her house, "Can't wait to frick your sister." I just shut the door and went inside to fulfill my promise, but I definitely cringed the next day. We talked about how the event went and whether or not to rehome a stray puppy we had found or keep him. We kept him. He's a little butthole, but he's a cute, so he has that going for him. I'm part of the married couple. We used my car as our bridal car. I was just a little quiet because my wife was talking to the maid of honor, talking about the guests. The driver was the BF of the mom, and mom is best friend of my wife, so why not go together? Not much interesting stuff being talked about. I was just thinking, so, this is how it feels to sit at the back passenger seats of my car. So much room. Hope driver drives slow. I need to absorb this feeling. This is how it feels to sit at the back passenger seats of my car. I don't know why this is so funny. I'm just imagining you forgetting everything and just smiling about the back of your car and not driving. I don't drink, so I drove the wife and I to our hotel. We mostly talked about the awkward people, her mom that left early without saying anything, and how we barely ate anything. We got McDonald's on our way to the hotel. No joke, my husband and I hardly ate anything at our wedding. We stopped to get some takeout before we got to our hotel. In my fantasy, my husband and I wouldn't be able to take our hands off each other as soon as we got to the room. In reality, we sat in the common area of our hotel room, ate fast food, and watched an Adventure Time marathon on Cartoon Network. As a chauffeur, I drove just the bride the day after the wedding, and it was about an hour-long drive. I didn't know anything about it, but she decided to share her story with me, probably just because she needed someone to talk to. First, to begin with, I went over to the most expensive hotel in the city. It wasn't as a 5-star 5-diamond hotel, over 100 years old, with the luxury, the ambience, the full 9 yards, but she wasn't at the hotel, but on a bench a quarter block down. The valet realized who I was looking for and actually pointed her out to me, and I approached her, in person and on foot. I was able to confirm that she was my pickup. Over the course of about an hour-long ride, she told me that she had her wedding, and she and her soldier husband were going to stay at this ridiculously expensive and luxurious hotel, but his credit card was rejected, so they spent hours trying to borrow money from some friends, and this upset her so much that she decided to go back to her parents' house. which was in the same military town her new husband lived in anyway. She was upset and unhappy, and it was a somewhat uncomfortable ride. She tipped me when we got there, but it was not a fun ride. The trip back on my own was more enjoyable. I'm probably late to this one, but here goes. My husband and I were supposed to drive back to the hotel together for the after party in his car. His family decorated it and it was adorable. I had always wanted to ride in a just married car. My brother, who drove my car to the venue, bringing many of the decor items, was supposed to return my car to my house in the next day or two. He then proceeded to get sloshed. His girlfriend of a couple years at the time stood him up at my wedding to go to a theme park with her guy friend. I didn't want him driving my car, so I said screw it, I'll drive myself and stuck him in an Uber. I get in my car, in my floofy wedding gown, only to see that my brother left it with no gas, so there I am alone in a wedding gown, at nearly midnight pumping gas. I probably looked like a runaway bride. One of my husband's friends rode with him to the hotel, with people honking and waving at the newly married couple. We got a kick out of it later. At the time I was P. One of my wife's favorite pictures from our wedding is her chugging a MT Dew in her dress while I pumped gas in my tux. It really is a good picture, just a funny one to have. Not a driver, but as a married, we were just both making the same plan to frick then go to sleep. We'd both been up since butthole o'clock and had an 11-hour drive the next day. Plus I wanted out of that fricking snow beast of a dress my mom demanded I have as the only child and first non-shotgun wedding in nearly 2 decades. Yikes. I am not a driver, but here is my driver experience. It was at the end of the night and I'm cleaning crap up. Most people had left and we had shuttles taking people back to hotels that we set up for our guests. It's about midnight and we had to have things mostly good at that point and then we could come back Sunday morning and finish up. So I'm hurrying around getting things, my jacket, whatever. As I'm leaving, the bus driver starts with this attitude, paraphrasing, like you better get onto the shuttle or I'm leaving and this is the last ride. Blah, blah, blah. After his mini rant, I informed him that I'm the groom and I already pre-tipped him. He stopped, turned around, and sat back in the shuttle. I didn't receive an apology, but by that point I was exhausted and didn't care. Like, bro, you're the driver. You have one job. You get paid to do this job and you get a tip. If you don't like waiting to make sure everyone is good to go, then quit your job as a driver. Do something else. Not a driver, but a couple. We didn't get to eat much at our reception BC, we were so busy talking to everyone. Someone packed to-go boxes for us and we stuffed our faces in the car. Laughed when I spilled food on my dress. I'm sure we kissed, maybe, more focused on the food and talking about the high points of the ceremony reception. Before you ask, no alcohol involved. We had sex for the first time when we got to the hotel. At our wedding, since we only ate a little bit of our food, the venue offered not only to box our food, but make us an entirely new meal and package it up for us. We told them to give it to my mill. Well, they gave it to my mom, who somehow misinterpreted the situation and thought we requested it for her, so she took our food home with her and ate it. In the late 70s and early 80s I drove the limo for my family's funeral business and we offered free limo rides for weddings and the families we served. My favorite ride. The bride broke out a big fatty for her and her bridesmaids to enjoy on the way to the ceremony. When they passed it to me for a hit, the huge amount of red lipstick on the head made me laugh. Another time, it was a 15-minute ride to the reception after the ceremony and the bride and groom were there with the best man. I made the bestie sit in the front. He felt awkward. Anyway, Hall & Oates' Kiss on My List started playing on the radio. The sound was great in this caddy, so I blasted it. I didn't hear what they talked about, but they did kind of blush. It was cute. As the bride, I cried on the ride to our hotel because it was all over. A year and a half of planning, scrutinizing every single little detail. It was a feeling of emptiness because the whole night flew by in the blink of an eye and I barely got to enjoy it. I'm sure the driver thought I was a mental case. Hey, regardless of the last 2 comments, I think it's normal to feel emptiness at the conclusion of a big project you worked really hard on. Maybe it's a sign that you're ready for some other big task, direction, focus, that is, new career upgrade or side business. Part of the couple here, we drove our own car. I was DD because I don't drink and was a responsible wife. We just talked about OMG this is it, we're stuck together forever. Hey, how about that band? They were the best part and on and on and on about how much fun we had. Funny because hiring a band was last minute. That memory plays in my head from time to time. I hired a caricature artist and violinist fairly last minute. Both were amazing additions and the caricature artist was very popular. Poor thing didn't get a break once people knew he was there. Petition to change the title of this thread to married couples of Reddit. What was the thing you talked in backseat of car after marriage? For our wedding, we got into the limo after the ceremony with the bridal party to take pictures. Our reception was downtown and we ended up there about halfway through the cocktail hour. For the wedding, my in-laws chartered a bus to take people between the venue and the hotel so people could drink and not have to worry. We stayed behind to help clean up and missed the last bus. The maid of honor and her fiancé drove us back to the hotel. It was only a 10-minute drive, but we both passed out as soon as we sat down in the car. Not a driver but been at many strangers' weddings and want to share this nuts encounter I had. My dad has a side gig where he rents out champagne Ferris wheels, LED dance floors and photo booths for events and weddings. Per the contract he has to be present while anything he rents is in use because these things cost a lot of money and he's been screwed before. When I was in college I used go with him to weddings from time to time for the free meal and free bar before I'd meet my friends in town. One night I remember chatting to the maid of honor house the bride's sister and asked her, pretty weirdly I must admit and out the blue, why the bride's dad hadn't been at the top table. She went on to explain how the groom owed the bride's father hundreds of thousands of euros for drugs and almost everything the father had ever done for them including buying them a house. She said he was either coming to collect the cash on that night or the morning after. I walk away and tell my dad assuming she was just drunk and wanted to take the pee out of me. No word of a lie while I'm telling my dad maybe 5 or 6 lads walk in smashing glasses and just wrecking the place and confront the groom. He calls someone to pass his jacket and writes a check for God knows how much to who I presume is his new father-in-law. The wedding then continued as if nothing happened. A few days later my dad calls me and said the father-in-law called to his office to pay for the rentals and handed him more than double what he has charged them in cash. Went back to the hotel with my wife, one of the bridesmaids and groomsmen and had some drinks. Went to sleep shortly after. The bridesmaid and groomsmen had more action than we did. When I got married, I foolishly allowed my uncle to drive my husband and I to the hotel in his Mustang. His 2-door Mustang. My husband is 6 feet 4 inches. I had a huge ball gown. Getting in and out of that thing was a nightmare, and my uncle is an infamously aggressive driver. My husband and I didn't talk to each other the whole ride. We just tightly held hands, occasionally glancing at each other with "this is how we die" glances. It was awful. I was driving a couple that seemed to have a good wedding. They talked about the best parts and what they wished would have been different and then talked about what sexy things they were gonna do. They actually invited me for a threesome and of course I obliged, and when we got to the room they took turns beating me with jumper cables. Baru imposter. My most unforgettable ride was the ride back to the hotel in Corpus Christi when I thought I had lost her engagement ring and was supposed to ask her to marry me the next day. It was in a back pocket of my camera bag instead of being in the front pocket, and I ended up asking her there in the hotel room after our initial freakout. She wasn't in the know until she saw how upset I was over something. Heck yeah, Corpus Christi representin'. I wasn't the driver, but I was on the bus with the bride, groom, and all of the groomsmen and bridesmaids. They were all so drunk. First, they checked to make sure there were no babies on the bus. Everyone said no babies on the bus. When we got off the bus, turns out someone's uncle had his baby with him on the bus. LOL. After said uncle didn't say anything about his baby, we were in the clear. So we started playing the most gangster crap we could find. We are all white as heck. It was great. Then after playing some Kodak and Future songs, we played Africa by Toto and belted that crap. The whole time the groom was standing in his seat spinning around, having a great time. Bride was sitting next to him. Everyone was drunk, but not blackout drunk. Then when we got back to the hotel, the groom got hit with every drink he drank and he needed to get carried off the bus. Then he stumbled into the window out front. Then he almost fell in the hallway. Then he fell when he got into the elevator. We got him back to his room, and he just sat in the hallway for a little while before he could make it in the door. Good times. I drove for a limo company once upon a time. I drove only 2 just married couples. One, we discussed the fact that I thought they were high school kids going to a prom because they looked like they were in their mid-teens. Both were actually in their late 20s. The other couple spent several minutes complaining about the fact that the privacy screen between the front and back wouldn't go up. They were very annoyed and very disappointed. I'm quite positive they were planning to bang in the back of the limo on the way to the airport. My mom's boyfriend drove my husband and I back to my apartment after we got married, while she and a few others stayed behind to clean up. He's driven for quite a number of weddings, but he still brings up how halfway home my husband's contacts were starting to bug him and he remembered he was out of contact fluid, so we stopped at Publix. I was alone in the car for 25 minutes taking selfies and updating Facebook to Married while he and my new husband were searching for a very specific brand of eyeball water. He will tell this story to anyone who will listen if they're patient enough to sit through him laughing his butt off while telling it. Almost all the comments are from people that recently got married. Did you not read the title? We don't care about your wedding story. They were just in the backseat talking about the Queen of England when I suddenly swerved off of the road due to a big vehicle stopped in the middle of it. I thought everything was going to be fine until a group of aliens manhandled me out of the car and brought me into their spaceship where I was interrogated. I woke up the next day in a ditch somewhere. That seems so legit. We talked about the people who ended up showing up to the wedding. Our wedding was planned in a month and a half. So we sent Facebook invites out instead of save the dates etc. We only expected a handful of people. Instead we had over 200 show up. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.